Hello and welcome to the Korean Beauty Show podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Lee, K-beauty expert, founder of Style Story, where you can shop, learn and explore the world of Korean skincare, and your guide to everything you need to know about K-beauty. So I flagged on Tuesday's episode that I wanted to have a little bit of a chat about the topic of plastic surgery in Korea because it's not something we've covered on the show before. I am not an expert in plastic surgery, so I will just say from the outset, please do not email me or DM me asking me where you should go if you are interested in coming for surgery in Korea. This is really not my wheelhouse. However, having lived here now for over 7 years, and knowing as much as I do, I guess, about Korean culture, and just having interacted with so many people while I've been here, I've managed to develop, I would say, enough of an understanding about this as an industry, about the origins of it, and the impact that it has on culture and all of those kind of things. So that's more what I want to talk about today. I'm not like a plastic surgery concierge or anything like that. So if you've tuned into this episode and that's what you're looking for, then you may be disappointed, but stick around if you'd just like to hear a little bit more about the industry in general, and how it kind of works over here, because that's what I'm planning on talking about today. So this is one of those things that I think gets a lot of airtime in the media. A lot of people talk about it, because there is some crazy facts and figures behind it. And in doing some research for this episode, I realized that there's a lot of conflicting information out there as well. So look, I will try my best to keep it as factual as possible while also just sort of talking through what I know just from having lived here, having spoken to, lots of different people and whatnot. So plastic surgery in Korea is a really big part of the culture. I think that is pretty undeniable. There were 470 plastic surgery clinics registered in Gangnam in Seoul in 2017. That was according to the National Tax Service, and that is more than 30% of the total number of clinics in the country in a single, district. Gangnam is a district in Seoul, and it is also probably the most famous place, I would say, if we're talking about plastic surgery in Korea. Most people, when they think of plastic surgery, they think of Gangnam, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But basically, the National Tax Service hasn't updated that figure since, is my understanding. So 470 clinics in 2017. Who knows if there are about the same, more or less. But anyway, we are talking about a really big industry, as an industry, about a $4 billion industry that takes up approximately 25% of the global market share. So I think there are a lot of reasons why this is such a big business and an industry. I think it would be silly to even try to pretend that the entertainment business here, K-pop, K-drama, all of that isn't very tied into it. It clearly is. But there are actually so many plastic surgeons and dermatologists now in Korea that there are a shortage of doctors in other specialties. And this is something that the government is trying to address and talk about how they can, convince people basically to take up other much needed specialties. And the reason for that is simply it comes down to capitalism. You can make more money as a plastic surgeon or running your own plastic surgery here in Korea than you can being a brain surgeon or any of the other many specialties that are out there, particularly for, dermatology clinics. I've spoken on the show before about how many there are and just the ease of getting into a dermatologist in this country. It's just not like anything I've ever seen or experienced in other countries where you have to wait. You have to, maybe wait up to 4 months. You're paying a lot of money for a single consultation. In Australia, consultations for a dermatologist run in the hundreds of dollars, and you will be in there maybe 5 to 10 minutes if you're lucky. Then you pay on top of that for, whatever thing you're having performed. If you're having a skin cancer taken out, if you are having a laser for acne scars, if you are whatever you're doing, maybe having a tattoo removed, that is then on top of that, a different charge on top of that. And from what I can understand, having spoken to family in Canada, it's much the same over there. There are really long wait times to get into specialists like dermatologists over there as well, or at least there can be, depending on where you're based. So, this is just a very, interesting industry that has developed over here that is very different to a lot of other countries and very different probably from where you're from as well, I would say. There are obviously all of the Koreans that are getting surgery here in the country, and then there are all the people that are flying here or coming here for the purposes of either surgery or medical tourism. And this is a really big industry in and of itself. So some of the figures, now I had a look at the pre-COVID figures because I think they're probably more accurate and a better representation of just how many people are flying over here to do this kind of thing, rather than the figures at the moment are still going to be a little bit all over the shop. Apparently in 2019, 90,000 people visited Korea to avail themselves of cosmetic surgery. But that's not all people are flying over here to get done. Apparently, plastic surgery is not even the number one thing people are coming for. The internal medicine department is most of it. Then plastic surgery, then dermatology, followed by overall medical checkups. And that was actually according to data from the KHIDI, which was submitted to the representatives in Parliament. So that was between 2018 to 2021. They were the most visited department. So people are coming here for medical procedures as well. There's so many reasons why people would do that, I guess, depending on where you're coming from and the standard quality and ease of access of healthcare in your own country. It might make more sense to fly somewhere else and do that, particularly in countries that don't have a really great, public health system. But it's safe to say that this is really big business, whether it's people flying to Korea to do this, whether it is Koreans, doing it themselves in Korea. There's a whole industry that is built up. I mean, it's not the only one in the world. I know that there are other places. Mexico apparently is a place where people go for medical tourism, particularly surgery, from places like the States if they're trying to save a little bit of money. I know Turkey is considered to be a bit of a hub for Europeans. It's not uncommon if you follow the UK news to see UK celebrities saying that they're going to Turkey for various things. So Korea is by no means the only place in the world that people fly to have surgery, obviously. But there is, I think, a really good reason why Korean plastic surgery in general is so famous. And that is because it's just in a league of its own over here. It is just in a different category. The amount of airtime that it takes up and the amount that people talk about it and how obvious it is and how much you can see it. I think that has all played into this being just a really big industry. So again, it depends on which sources you consult, but I have read some things saying that 1/3 of Korean women have had some kind of surgery. Others say 20%. Those numbers vary. It really does depend which source you're reading, and I think it probably also depends on what they consider to be surgery as well. Sometimes you'll see things online and it's like, oh, this person has had heaps of surgery done, and it's like, but she didn't actually have surgery, she had filler or whatnot. So I think that will probably play into it as well. But it's safe to say that a lot of people here have had something done to either their face or body, probably more so than in other countries, and certainly the stats that I've seen comparing the numbers of plastic surgery in Korea versus America suggests that there is much more going on here than there are other places like in the States. This is just, I guess, a really everyday topic of conversation, which maybe sounds a little bit strange if you're from a different culture. But it is not uncommon, particularly for students. So, there's people say that winter is the season for surgery over here, and there's a good reason for that, and that is because exams and whatnot finish up at the end of the year, and then you have a short break before uni starts in the new year. And Sunung is the big exam that people have to sit to determine where they're going to be able to go to university and which uni they can get into. And it's really common to hear and to see like ads and things like that floating around about, congratulations on finishing sunung. A lot of different, businesses and whatnot will advertise this kind of stuff. It's like, you worked really hard, good on you, you finished exams, have like a nice cake from like Paris Baguette maybe. Or, if you're a plastic surgery clinic, have a discount on your surgery. And that is because there is this whole culture that has built up of people actually having surgery in that period between finishing school and starting uni so that they have, time for their results to settle in. And it's not uncommon for a lot of parents to not only support their children doing that, but even offering to pay for it if they get good results as well. So that is definitely a thing. There are dramas based around this topic as well. Like, this is kind of acknowledged to be a thing. There was a drama that came out a few years ago called, in English, My ID is Gangnam Beauty. And that was pretty much what this drama was about. It was about this girl, was bullied at school for her appearance. She went under heaps of plastic surgery and then like debuted a new her at uni, basically. And, it was all about, I guess, her meeting people at uni, some people that knew what she used to look like before, other people that didn't know, and I guess how that all sort of worked out for her. It was quite an interesting drama. Go and check that out, I guess, if you like K-dramas and haven't already seen that one. But that is sort of how much a part of the lexicon that this kind of thing is. There are lots of terms in Korean for around plastic surgery things. Like, for example, 성괴, which is like a plastic surgery monster, someone that's had too much work and has taken it too far and doesn't look normal, maybe, like they've just gone to the extreme. Another really common one that you used to hear people say colloquially is Gangnam Onni, so like a Gangnam older sister. And this was based on the idea that, the people that hang out around in Gangnam have a particular type of look to them. And that's not because they were born like that, it's because they have gone to the plastic surgeons in Gangnam. And there is actually an app that you can use if you read Korean, if you can understand Korean. It is called Gangnam Onni. And it is an app where you can check reviews for different plastic surgery clinics and, see the procedures that are out there, see the hospitals that do all of those kind of things. And, if a particular surgeon is good at, I don't know, for example, breast surgery, or maybe you want to have your double eyelid surgery done, you can actually download this app and like check out all of that. So that was a little bit of a play of the colloquial expression Gangnam Onni. They've just called their app that, basically. And there's other apps out there like that as well that are, similar, talking about reviews for different clinics and procedures. You can even get the discounts. If a particular clinic has like a discount going for something or other, they will advertise that on these kind of apps. So that is kind of how much it is part of the lexicon, the culture. It is definitely part of the culture. So according to a 2020 survey by Gallup Korea, 89% of Koreans think that a person's looks matter either somewhat or a lot in life. So that means only 11% of people think that they don't matter, that looks do not matter. I don't know what those kind of figures would be in other societies, but I'm almost willing to bet that it wouldn't be close to 90% of people think that it matters either somewhat or a lot. I think that this is, it's very talked about. Appearance, I mentioned on the last episode, is really, really heavily discussed. What people look like, who's pretty, who's not pretty, who, all of these kind of things is just like much more openly talked about, and to the person's face as well. If someone thinks that you do look pretty, they will say that to the person. But by the same token, if someone thinks that someone is not pretty or would be pretty if they did X, Y, or Z, they'll pretty much tell that to people's face as well. And I discussed my reservations with that on the last episode, so I'm not gonna, rehash that. I think you guys already know how I feel about that. But, there is this whole, I guess, way of thinking about all of this over here. So the same Gallup survey that was done back in 2020 asked people whether having plastic surgery with the goal of getting a job or getting married is acceptable. And 67% of people said yes. Only 28% of people said that it was not desirable to get surgery for the goal of getting a job or getting married. Like, that is a lot of people that think that is a very good reason for getting surgery. And I just don't think the numbers would be the same if you polled random people on the street in America or in Australia or anything like that. So I think those kind of results, statistics, kind of illustrate the point that I'm trying to make, is that this is very much a part of the culture. It is not uncommon at all to see online commentary, particularly about idols and stars and what they've had done. If they've gone under the knife, you will often see their old yearbook photos get released. And it's like, this is what this person looked like as a freshman, and this is what they look like now. What do we think they've had done? Like, that's very common to see those kind of things online. I mentioned that the drama My ID is Gangnam Beauty. This is the subject of dramas and movies as well. There was a new movie that came out last year called Men of Plastic, and that was basically the story of like a guy that set up a fake story, dramatized, but set up a plastic surgery clinic in Gangnam. So this kind of thing is talked about in the media as well. And I guess the other thing that gets talked about a lot, particularly when people are reporting on, K-beauty outside of Korea and Korean plastic surgery, I guess maybe the easy way to explain it is people are like, oh, well, why is this a thing? Why does everyone want to, look a certain way? Oh, it must be because everyone wants to look more Western. I think that is a very, very common trope that you will see trotted out, particularly because if you discuss the beauty standard here, the beauty ideal, I think it's easy to just conflate that and go, well, these are all common Western characteristics, so it must just be that everyone is trying to look Western. Why do I say that? Well, the beauty aesthetic here, like I mentioned on Tuesday's episode, it's very much pale skin is the standard. Now that is changing, particularly around the gym culture. Tanning kind of goes hand in hand with bodybuilding and muscle building and whatnot. So that is changing, but in general, the standard has been for quite a while, very, very pale skin. It has been really big eyes, a high nose bridge, and this V-line face shape. The egg-shaped face that is tapered at the end, like the top of an egg. Basically flip the egg upside down, and that is the kind of face shape that a lot of people really aspire to here. So if you look at that really quickly, you might just say, oh, well, they're typical Western features, so it must just be that everyone is trying to look Western. And there's a lot of really great commentary online. A lot of professors and social commentators have, given their own, I guess, input and theories into why this kind of, aesthetic has built up over the years, and whether or not it is because people are trying to look more Western, or whether it's its own version of, the Korean beauty standard. So I'll go into a little bit of that. But I think there's some other really good reasons why plastic surgery as a culture is as big as it is. And the first thing, and I don't know if you can really appreciate this until you have visited Seoul in particular, is how on top of each other we all live here. This is such a densely populated area of the world, and it is not a lie to say that everyone literally lives on top of each other. Like, the sheer amount of, apartment buildings crammed into such a small space, the sheer amount of people that you see, like, catching the subway, on the bus, anytime you are walking on the street, people are very impacted by what other people do here, because we see so much of everybody anytime we leave the house, basically. There's people everywhere. So it's just inevitable that when you are out and about, you're going to see what other people wear, you're going to see what bags they have, what shoes they have, how they style their hair, what cars they drive, all of that kind of thing. And it's just not the same when you live in, say, the suburbs in Australia, or if you live, maybe somewhere in Canada or the States, maybe even like California, more populated areas of that. It's just not on the same level. So I think that cannot be discounted when we're talking about any kind of trends that pop up in Korean beauty, in Korean food, all of that kind of thing. There's a very good reason for that, and that is because we see all of that every day. And it's just inevitable that when people see so many other people wearing something, a particular style of coat maybe, or shoes or something like that, that you naturally get influenced by what other people do. People are kind of sheep in that respect, I think. If you see enough of it, you tend to go, okay, well, that's what we're doing, let's do that too. And, that's why you see that at schools. Like, remember back to when you were in high school, if there was a certain thing that everyone was doing, like other people started doing it. And that's why, in high school, it's kind of like a bit of a microcosm, because you are impacted, you see the same people every day, and you're in very close quarters with them, taking classes and whatnot. So Seoul is kind of like that, but on like a much bigger scale. So I think that explains a lot of why these kind of things become trends and why people here do what they do. That is one part of it. The other thing is that this is a very competitive society. There is just no two ways around that. People are competing for houses, they're competing for car parks, they're competing for jobs, everything. Having this many people packed in such a small space naturally leads to competition, and I guess it's much easier to see what other people are doing, which leads to its own natural competition. I mean, even think about it from the perspective of restaurants and coffee shops and things like that. If there are that many in the same small area, then naturally you're going to want to be the best, because if you're not, then it's going to be pretty dog eat dog, and the guy 2 doors down is going to take all of your customers. So it is a very, very competitive society, and that is just the way it is. People are living all close together. There is the benefit of choice. You've got a lot of different choice, so people have to stay competitive. And I think that plays into the looks department as well. And, until semi-recently, it used to be a requirement that you had to put a photo of yourself on your CV or resume. So if you think about that, like, that just intensifies all of this. It just makes things more looks driven than they need to be, pretty much, That's been done away with, but I think it would be silly to pretend that looks don't have a lot to do with it. I mean, that survey pretty much said that people here think that is important, the way you look. So obviously that then feeds into it. If you're going for a job interview or anything like that, people think it's important to look a particular way, to look good, then that is what is going to be delivered up. If you are trying to compete in a capitalist society, that has currency. So I think that is, another part of this as well. The other thing is there's absolutely no denying the role that K-pop and K-drama has in influencing the way people look and the way people want to look. And that goes hand in hand with plastic surgery. You only need to have a look at any of the top K-pop, groups. You only need to turn on the TV and see a K-drama to see very clear signs that some of these people were not born with those faces or those features, and that then influences other people to want to go out and look like their favorite idol. It's the same thing, I guess, when the Kardashians came along in the Western world. All of the kind of aesthetic that they had all of a sudden became popular. So, the big maybe butts, Brazilian butt implants and lifts and all of those procedures started to take off because people wanted to emulate what they were seeing on TV. And it's the same thing here. It's just that the beauty standard is different. So this is where, I guess, perceptions kind of differ then about why people want to look a certain way. So there are some people that point out that obviously Korea is a very racially homogenous society. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to suggest that all of these people are going out, and getting plastic surgery to look more Western, because basically most people that live here are Korean. And if they're not, then the next subset of people are Asian anyway. So it's not like there's a whole bunch of Westerners walking around and people want to look more like them. And there is one author who wrote a book called The Birth of Korean Cool, and her name is Uni Hong. And she said that, while some individual procedures that are really trending and popular in Korea, like the double eyelid surgery, may have started out as a desire to look more Western, in her view, she doesn't actually think that that is why Korean people get double eyelid surgery anymore, that doesn't actually have anything to do with it anymore. She says she thinks that is just, the aesthetic here has like developed and taken on its own unique style. And a lot of other people say that too. There's a scholar from Seoul National University, Soyeon Lim, and she has also talked about the fact that, the contemporary Korean plastic surgery style is a lot different from the kinds of surgeries that were being done, back in the post-war period when a lot of these surgeries, I guess, were invented in the first place. So that then brings me to the next part of, I guess, the conversation, and that is, what are the popular surgeries when it comes to Korean plastic surgery here? And the number one thing I think that is generally cited as being the most popular is blepharoplasty, Asian blepharoplasty, which is usually the double eyelid surgery or some kind of surgery to widen the eyes and make them look bigger. And this is a really, really popular one for a lot of the celebrities to do. So the origins of this surgery were in the post-war period. So there was there was an American military surgeon, a plastic surgeon that was operating in Korea, and he was helping a whole lot of different people who had injuries from the war. So basically trying to provide reconstructive surgeries to people that had been disfigured. That was what he was doing. He also became very well known for doing cleft palate surgeries on children as well. He was a man named David Ralph Millard, and he was actually stationed in Seoul in 1954. And one of the things that he popularized was this Asian blepharoplasty. And he had some pretty, in retrospect, disgusting colonial views about why that was a good procedure to do. I'm not going to go into all of that. You can go and read more about that if you're into it. But it's suffice to say that I think that even though he popularized that kind of thing at the time, it has clearly taken on a life of its own. And, I don't know that the people that are going into surgeons and clinics these days necessarily have, or have anything to do with what he started. Look, I'm sure opinions differ on that, but I think there are a lot of different factors that have really fed into the current aesthetic and the things that people do. Other really popular surgeries here include things like raising the nose bridge to make the nose higher. That's another really popular one. And then, of course, there are all the facial shaping surgeries as well. If you've ever Googled Korean plastic surgery, you might have seen some of they're almost memes at this point, I think, that show all of the Miss Korea entrants or pageant entrants in Korea, and they pretty much all have the same face shape and the same kind of features, and it basically looks like 30 people that could be all related or the same person, because that's just the ideal look here, I guess. So they're the kind of things that I think people tend to do more so, whereas traditionally in Western countries and in places like Australia and the US, I think it started off more that people would do enhancements on their bodies. So things like liposuction, things like breast enhancement, all of those kind of things were more popular than doing facial plastic surgery. Whereas here, I think it was less about the body and more about the face. Now, this has changed. Obviously, there is lots of talk about, Instagram face and, the filters and the impact that that's having on people wanting to go and get procedures and surgeries and whatnot. So I think this is all changing, but traditionally I think Koreans placed a lot more emphasis on the face than Westerners did. And for Westerners, a lot of it was about, achieving a great body. So look, I just wanted to, we could literally spend a lot of time on this topic. I'm not sure how interested you guys are in knowing more about this, in hearing me talk about this. So I just wanted to kind of touch on the industry itself, some of the kind of facts and figures, what people are actually doing here, and potentially why, although opinions obviously clearly do differ. But I'm going to leave it here, and I will just leave it up to you. If this is a topic that you guys would like to hear more about, obviously please come and find me and let me know. If you're not interested in it, we will just move on and keep going with the other kind of things that we often talk about on the show, which are much more, beauty related and less surgery related. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a plastic surgeon, I'm not performing any of these kind of things, but I think it's impossible to have lived here for as long as I have without noticing all of this going on around you. Like there are ads for plastic surgery on the subway, there are billboards and signs. I mean, our office is in Gangnam, and if you walk down the street here, it's like every second or third building at least will have one plastic surgery clinic or dermatologist or something like that in it. Like this is where it's based. It's all right here. So I just thought that, this is a broader topic related to Korean beauty, so why don't we talk about it? It's been, maybe a long time coming, I guess. We've never really got there in the last 3 years, but there you go. So look, I'll leave it here for today. Let me know if this is something you are interested in. If you are not interested in it at all, that is totally fine. And until next time, until we speak next time, I will see you on Style Story.